All right, did you buy a qualifying car this year? So by qualifying, I mean it's going to be a car that had manufacturing done, the final manufacturing in the United States. It's going to meet the weight requirements, so it's not going to be a super large vehicle like a delivery type of vehicle thing. And it's also going to be a vehicle that is used for personal use, and you're using the car as collateral or security to secure the loan that you took. If you did, then what's happening is you may be able to deduct the interest that you're paying. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to walk through the math on what happens if your modified adjusted gross income is going to be greater than the phase out amount. So it's $100,000 for the phase out amount. So what happens if your modified adjusted gross income exceeds $100,000? So I'll give you an example and we're going to work through the calculations. If you're trying to determine whether you even qualify, I do have some other videos that you can take a look at that gives you an overview of what the Schedule 1A deductions are. All right, well, let's go ahead and start looking at the fact pattern so we can get to the math so you can see what happens on the phase outs. For this situation, what we're going to be dealing with is a single taxpayer who's going to be paying interest on their qualifying vehicle of $9,400. So what we have to look at is, are they above the phase out amount? Now, when we're dealing with interest, the phase out amount is going to be $100,000. We can see our Maggie is going to be $104,300. We calculated that on part 1 of our Schedule 1A, line number 3. So we have $104,300. It's going to exceed that $100,000 by $4,300. So we need to figure out how we're going to reduce our deduction for the interest deduction. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the Schedule 1A for this section of it, and we're going to go ahead and do the math to see what happens. All right, so now we're looking at this part number 4. We're looking at our no tax on car loan interest. So you can see in line number 22, what I did is I provided you a website. So if you're trying to determine whether your car was manufactured, at least final assembly occurring in the United States, you can go to there and add your VIN number, and it's going to tell you where the final assembly took place. Now, what we have is $9,400 from our loan documents. I previously showed you that on the examples, what we were using for our interest. So we have $9,400, which is the same amount we're going to be using for number 23 because we only have the one vehicle. Now what we're looking at is line 24. We are going to be capped at $10,000. So the ceiling on loan interest that you can take for a car for the deduction is going to be $10,000. So if we had, say, $11,000 that we paid, we'd have been limited to $10,000. That's not the case in our situation because we only had $9,400. So we're going to put $9,400 there. That ceiling doesn't impact us, so we didn't lose anything there. We made it through the first hurdle unscathed. We're at $9,400. So what's going to happen now is you're going to see that we get to line number 25 and we're using our modified adjusted gross income, which is what we calculated in part 1, line number 3 on the Schedule 1A. So it's our modified adjusted gross income. And we're going to compare that to the ceiling of $100,000 before the phase out starts. So the phase out threshold is going to be $100,000, which means we are $4,300 over where the phase out starts. So when we subtract the $100,000 from the $104,300, that shows us at $4,300. Because we're over the phase out, it means that we're going to have to reduce the amount that we can deduct for interest. So we're no longer going to get that full $9,400. It's going to be a reduced amount. Well, how much will it be reduced by? Well, here's the math that we're going to do. We're going to take that $4,300 and we're going to divide by 1,000. The reason we divide by 1,000 is we have to go ahead and we're going to reduce the amount of our deduction by $200 for every $1,000 that we exceed that phase out amount. So if we exceed this by 4,300, we're going to go 4,300 divided by 1,000. That's going to give us 4.3. Now this differs from when we were looking at overtime and tip income because now we're going to round up to the highest number. In the others, we rounded down, but here that 4.3 now becomes a 5. So what we do is we have 5 increments of 1,000, and for every increment of 1,000, we reduce the deduction by $200. So we go 5 times 200, which means that our deduction now is going to be reduced by $1,000. So instead of getting $9,400, we'll reduce it by the $1,000 that I put in line number 29. That means our deduction is now going to be $8,400. That's all we're going to be able to deduct for purposes of the Schedule 1A deduction with the car loan interest. Hey, if these videos are helping, remember to subscribe to my channel. What I'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a video as part of the Schedule 1A series, and I'm going to do the video on the deduction if you're 65 or older.